Now, there's a whole bunch of rules surrounding it, right? The person who creates the account has to have been determined disabled prior to the age of 26. That's actually increasing to 41 in
Yay.
January of 2026. So that's great news. It's expanding soon. So
And
there
that
has to
needed
be,
to expand.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, did it? Because there's people who develop disabilities after 26 who were precluded from using this device. So it needed to happen. It was a good thing. But it doesn't come into effect until this coming January 2026. So person was disabled prior to the requisite age is part of the requirement. And then so once they establish this account, there are limitations about how much you can contribute. So you can only contribute up to the gift tax exclusion each year, which this year is $19,000. So from all sources, whether I put money in there, the person with disabilities puts their own money in there, Jeff, you put money in there, it's total 19,000 for the year. That's the maximum annual contribution, at least for 2025. And so that money can go in there and it doesn't count against the person. They can have it and they can still qualify for these benefits. They can use the money for qualifying disability related expenses, which is pretty broad. It can be used for rent, it can be used for food, it can be used for assistive devices. So it's pretty broad actually on what qualifies as a qualifying medical, like disability related expense. So you can use the money when you need it, but you're not scrambling to use the money when you don't want to to get benefits. So the ABLE account is a really great device when we don't have too much money we're trying to deal with. A small inheritance somebody received, they accumulated a little bit too much money to qualify for the program they're on, and we just need to get rid of some of it, but we don't want to just blow it. It's a great place to store it till we need it. There are some limitations about the total amount you can put in. For SSI purposes, supplemental security income, you can only have $100,000 in the account. Then it starts counting against you after that. Medicaid doesn't have the same limitation, but a lot of times the two programs are interrelated, so I generally try to keep it under the 100,000. But one of the downsides of the ABLE account is it has what's called a payback provision. So anything that's left in the account when the person passes away would go to pay back Medicaid for benefits that they paid for the person during their lifetime. So the goal of the ABLE account isn't necessarily to create some huge savings account. It's really to place the money and be able to use it when you need it. So that's sort of the ABLE account. The Special Needs Trust has a similar function in the sense that it takes excess resources, money that is disqualifying a person from benefits, and puts it into a trust that is not a countable resource against it. That's the big picture. And what we're talking about is called a first party special needs trust, because there's also a third party special needs trust. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the first party special needs trust, what makes that one special is the federal law says that if you meet certain criteria, we're not going to count it against you. So what are those things? Well, first, the first party special needs trust has to be funded with money belonging to the person with disabilities. So if they, again, I like to use the example, come into an inheritance, mom or dad, grandma, grandpa, they didn't have a will, or their will said, I give the money to my child, and didn't have any other planning. That money, then they pass away, that money belongs to that person. It's theirs. It has what we call in the legal world vested. It's theirs. At that point, I can't just get rid of it. I have to put it into some device, and the way we can do it is a special needs trust. So that's money belonging to the person. Another common example is personal injury settlements. They get injured, they receive money from this injury settlement. That's their money. That can go into the first party special needs trust. So it's just a couple of examples. But what are the criteria? Well, the person has to be a person with disabilities as determined by the Social Security Administration. The trust has to be structured so it's for their sole benefit, which is sort of, you'd think that would be easy, but they really scrutinize this quite strictly. So I'll give you an example. You have a trust and it makes a distribution for rent on a house. Well, who lives in the house? Is it just the person with disabilities, or is it mom and dad and the person with disabilities? If you pay the rent for the whole house, is that for their sole benefit? The answer is no. So we have to be very cautious about distributions from these trusts to make sure they're truly for the sole benefit of the beneficiary, which is the person with disabilities. The other criteria include that the trust has to be established and funded, meaning the money goes into it prior to the person turning age 65. So 64 and 364 days, we're good. 65, no good. So we've got to be very cautious about when we create and put money into this trust. And so this all sounds really great, right? Okay, great. You got this extra money, you put it in this trust, and you qualify. Woo, we're good. The downside of this trust is that it has what's called a payback provision, which means that any money left in the trust when the person passes away goes to pay back Medicaid for benefits paid over the person's entire lifetime. And that could be the entire balance of the trust, depending on what kind of, how long the person has been on Medicaid, program they were on. That could be a lot of money. DDD also has a lien. So if the person is on Medicaid and DDD, now we've got two entities we're paying back for services over the person's lifetime. And so a first party trust is not an ideal way to plan. But if we are in a situation where our person with disabilities has money, it's their money, it's a tool that we can use to make sure they don't lose their benefits or that they get to keep them.
And that's such a key part there between first and third party trust, and why estate planning for the parents or the grandparents is so important. Because I don't know about you, but one of the biggest kind of traps I see or mistakes is a family lands in my office because the disabled adult has inherited a bunch of money outright because there wasn't kind of a thoughtful plan above them as far as how to give money to a trust. So really appreciate the explanation there of how to set up the trust and the criteria. Super, super helpful.